Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TCG Talk, back today with another video. In today's video, I wanted to bring you the results from the call in Singapore. I'm going to give you meta breakdowns, top 8, day 2 conversions, all of that stuff for you. I know sometimes it's hard to kind of find that information, so wanted to give it to the masses and we'll kind of discuss it and talk about it and just have a good time. So if you're new to the channel, thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. If you're a long-standing supporter, thank you so much as well. I really y'all have been awesome lately. We've been getting consistent uploads. Channel's been healthy. Community's been great in the Discord. I just really appreciate y'all. So feel free to check out the Discord and the Patreon down below. The Discord is crazy bumping right now. We have over 400 members doing really well. And Patreon, right now, have 4 Patreon members. Y'all are insane. It's crazy that people support the content that way. So thank you so much for that. So we'll get right into it. I have like an Excel spreadsheet with everything in here, and I also have the graphics that were on stream that I just quite literally screenshotted because that was like the only way you could really do it. But let's pull that up real fast. I'll pull up the screenshots first just so you can kind of get a visual look, and then we'll talk about the numbers. So this was the day 1 of the call in Singapore. 50 Lexi. No surprise there. Lexi, Oldheim, Dromide be in the top 3. I think everyone expected that. I don't think anyone expected anything crazy. Definitely more Katsu than I expected. 24 Katsu's a lot. I knew Katsu. I know, like, just from the community standpoint, Katsu's a little bit more popular over in the APAC region, like really popular. So people love their Katsu over there, and they love like their Rhinar, which is why I think you even saw a good amount of Rhinar, even though Rhinar's pretty hard in this meta. And they love their dash. So all 3 of those usually are pretty represented, but 24 Katsu being the 4th most represented hero, that I was not expecting. Azalea also had pretty high. Even though Azalea is really good in this meta, I thought we'd see a little bit more dash. Definitely thought we'd see more Uziri. We only had 13 Uziri, which for me, I thought Uziri would be kind of where Katsu is right now, or where Azalea is, being like the 4th or 5th most represented. So that was pretty nice to see. 5 Icelander, which we'll talk about there here in a second, because Icelander had an insane day 2 conversion, a good one. Other stuff, not really crazy surprising. A little bit more Kano than expected. 11 Kano is a pretty good amount, and only 1 Bolton. The 2 heroes that were not represented were Arachne and Levia. And then going to day 2, we had 17 Lexi, 10 Oldheim. The biggest drop off was Dromai. As you can see in day 1, we had 28 Dromai. Out of those 28, only 4 of them made day 2, which is only a 14% conversion rate, which is pretty low. One of the worst conversion rates, especially for such a represented hero. So I think Dromai just has a lot of tough matchups. Like, Dromai is definitely a good deck if you know how to play it. I just think it has too many 50-50 or top matchups in order to be like viable, and you have to be a very skilled player in order to navigate through all those matchups. Like the Oldheim matchup is very hard. The Lexi matchup's very hard. The Azalea matchup, although easy, can trip you up. Then she has to deal with aggro decks like Katsu and Fi and Kano. Just really hard, I think, for Dromites to consistently make it through big tournaments because they have so many. It's the illusionist issue. There's so many polarizing matchups, so many difficult matchups. So that was really interesting. And then we had top 8, which we'll talk about here in a second. I'm just going to show it. We'll go to the data, and then we'll come back to top 8. But we had 1 Dash, 3 Oldheim, Alexia, Dromai, Uziri, and an Icelander. Some notable names in there: Hayden Dale, Nick Butcher, really good, Sam Sutherland, Matt Rogers. Pretty stacked top 8, to be honest, when it comes to player skill. So that was the top 8. So we'll go into the actual data. So this is from top to bottom. You can see like the most represented heroes versus the least represented. As we just saw, Katsu, Oldheim, and Dromai. And it kind of goes down from there. The 2 heroes that were not represented were Arachne and Levia. So Lexi made up 18% of the entire calling metagame. There was 270 players. If I add up what they gave us, so equates to 270. Day 2, we had 65 players. 17 Lexi made it to day 2, so 34% conversion rate. That's pretty good. 1 in every 3 Lexi made day 2. I thought that'd actually be a little bit higher. I thought Alexi would hit like 40% day 2 conversion rate, but they could be bouncing each other out at like top tables and stuff, so not too crazy there. Oldheim, 33%. Oldheim always has a good day 2 conversion, just never not does. I thought actually a couple more Oldheim might make it. I thought both of those heroes would make like 40% conversion rates, but they were a little bit lower. The biggest disappointment, I guess, in quotes, is Dromai again. Only 4 out of the 28 Dromai's made day 2, which is pretty significant. And Katsu even had a really bad day 2 as well. Only 3 Katsu out of 24 made day 2, which is 12%. So Both of those heroes did not perform well going into the second day, which I figured that the both of them would do a little bit better, but Katsu's kind of hard. As good as Katsu is, Katsu also has some matchups that are just a loss. The Lexi matchup, I know the Polish list said they did really well, but maybe they're just an anomaly. The Lexi matchup with Katsu is near auto loss if you don't draw into your power cards quickly. Some people may disagree with me on that, but I've tested the matchup a lot. And if the Lexi draws her normal hands, unless you draw a full surging line every turn, you just lose. And then Oldheim is not a good matchup. Azalea is not a fun matchup for Katsu either. So really, Katsu has a lot of issues at the top of the metagame right now. Once Oldheim leaves, it might change a little bit. But so that didn't surprise me too much. Azalea's conversion was pretty good, 6 out of the 20. It's basically 30%. It's on par with like the top decks. Nothing crazy there. Dash actually had a pretty good conversion rate. 5 out of the 17 Dash made it. Other notables, only one Reinar made day 2 out of the 13. Only one Viserai out of the 12. Only one Fi out of the 11. A lot of one-ofs. One Briar out of the 9. So most of those heroes had basically a 10% conversion rate. The biggest conversion rate for day 2 was Icelander. 4 out of the 5 Icelanders made day 2. I think Icelander's in a pretty good spot. There's a couple like Weather Vane and Ice Vane lists that are running around that can just disrupt the crap out of Lexi. The Oldheim matchup is winnable, although not fun. And then Dromai, they aren't favored in a Dromai per se, but there's also ways they can disrupt Dromai and play into Dromai, or they just avoid it. And with only 5 Icelanders, maybe it's a couple of them just avoid the Dromai matchup. But they do get into aggro. Icelander's an interesting one for me. I'm not like an Icelander connoisseur by any means, but like thinking about the top of the metagame, they do okay in Alexi, but can still lose if they get blown out if they don't disrupt properly. The Oldheim matchup's a winnable matchup, but not favored in my opinion. Dromai matchup is a winnable matchup, but not favored. Katsu's definitely a winnable matchup. They can win that pretty good. Azalea is winnable, but really if Azalea high rolls, then they just lose. It's kind of interesting. Like a lot of the top of the metagame really Icelander has some trouble with, so I was very surprised on how they did so well. But regardless, they did. 4 out of 5 Icelander made day 2. Really impressive. And then finally, Bravo did pretty well as well. 4 out of 10 Bravo made day 2 for a 40% conversion rate. So the day 2 meta, right? So like what made up the day 2 meta? Lexi made up 26% of the day 2 meta. 1 every 4 players was a Lexi player, and Oldheim made up 15%. So 40% of the day 2 meta was Oldheim and Lexi. So that's pretty significant. Shows the dominance of those two heroes, and it kind of reflected going in the top 8, even though only one Lexi made top 8, just like where the tables and the breakers were. A lot of Lexis were like on the breaker bubble. And yeah, so no other hero had over 10% of the metagame other than Lexi and Oldheim, and they made up 40%. The next highest one was Dash at 7% of the meta, and then after that, it tapers off really significantly. So that's how the data shook out. And then we had top 8 here. We had Sam Sutherland against Matt Rogers. Matt Rogers ended up winning that matchup, which was really interesting. I didn't get to watch that matchup. I want to go back and watch it because it's really interesting because normally Oldheim doesn't like Dash. It's normally not a great matchup for them. Normally Dash really can just stack, especially if they get their items out early, can really just put a hurting on Oldheim. So it was really cool that Matt Rogers was able to eke that out. I might go back and watch that and see how that game shook out because I wasn't able to watch top 8 because it started at like 3 a.m. my time and just wasn't able to get it. But Matt Rogers did end up winning that, and he faced off against I don't want to mispronounce their name, but at expense of not mispronouncing their name, the Lexi ended up beating Sable in their matchup and ended up playing the Lexi. Hayden Dale had a rematch with Nick Butcher. Hayden, I believe, had beaten Nick in the Swiss, and then Nick kind of got revenge in the top 8. And then finally Z and Liam played where I believe Liam won that matchup. The Icelander gained to top 4, which is pretty cool. Yeah, he did. The Icelander won. So we had a Dash, or Oldheim, Alexi, another Oldheim, and an Icelander in the final 4. in the top half of the bracket, Lexi ended up beating Matt Rogers to get to the final, and Nick Butcher ended up being the Icelander out. So we had an Icelander versus or a Lexi versus Oldheim final. No surprise there, where Nick Butcher ended up taking it. Nick's a pretty accomplished player, has done a lot of good placings, so this is just adding to his repertoire. But yeah, Oldheim took it. It's pretty funny that Oldheim takes another major calling, even though he's technically already a living legend. I know the announcement, their official living legend date hasn't came yet, but it's going to be fun to see where these tournaments go without Oldheim in it. I have my opinions on like playing Oldheim even after a living legend. Like, it's interesting. I guess if you think it's the best deck, like, it is a calling, and for a calling, you're going to take what you think the best deck is. Nationals is a little bit far away too. We're going to get a new set, so like practicing another hero for Nationals when it makes sense, or Worlds, it doesn't really need to happen yet until we see the new heroes and the new archetypes. So, but Oldheim versus Lexi in the final, really zero surprise there. I'm excited to see what happens in this metagame after the Oldheim leaves the format. Sorry about that, wrong slide. But yeah, overall, it was a fun to watch, regardless of like how the meta shaped out. I don't think Lexi and them quite dominate as much as they normally do, which is probably a good thing. But the day 2 conversions were pretty significant, and Oldheim and Lexi making up 40% of day 2 at a calling is pretty crazy. But at the same time, I think a lot of people were just playing those decks because they knew it was the best deck in the room. And I think Dromai kind of struggling a little bit also helped those decks out even more. I think another reason that those decks did so well, or at least Lexi in particular, was there wasn't a lot of Assassin, wasn't a lot of even a couple of Rockneys hanging around. There wasn't any Uziris hanging around. Not a lot of disruption style decks. So if you can't disrupt Lexi, you can't win. This is basically the way it goes. So, yeah, hopefully y'all enjoyed this. Let me know what y'all think. Let me know where you think the meta is going to go here in the future with Oldheim leaving. This is like the second to last major event before Oldheim is out. There's one more Battle Hardened in LA, I believe, at the end of the month. Other than that, that's pretty much it for major events for Oldheim. But yeah, hopefully y'all enjoyed this. If you did, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If not me, go to our Fleshbug career, leave a like, comment, subscribe on their stuff so we can get more people seeing this game. Feel free to join the Discord and the Patreon down below for added channel benefits, and I'll see y'all next time on TC Talk. Thank y'all so much.